Amy, thank you so much for joining us today. And I was utterly delighted when you said you wanted to come on Transitions Unscripted to talk all about your experiences of divorce and co-parenting. And that's not just because that's what I want this platform to be about, people sharing their life's ups and downs, trials and tribulations that are completely unexpected. But also I feel the conversation we're going to have is going to resonate with so many people. And it's going to be for those people who I think have grown up in a household whose parents were divorced or separated and they were the ones being co-parented. Or it's for those people who are going through what you've been through and have had a divorce or a separation, and they're now having to do the co-parenting. So I think on so many levels, people are going to be able to get so much insight into what you've been going through and be able to relate that to their own lifestyles, really. And I also just want to stay at this stage as well. I know we talked a lot leading up to this conversation about divorce, and it's obviously a very personal experience and every divorce is different, but you were very mindful that there's other people involved, your ex-husband and obviously your children, and you've got to be aware of their sensitivities and their emotions, which I think adds to the whole magnitude of how difficult this road is to navigate. There are lots and lots of different, like we said, emotions that you've got to kind of take on board.
Yeah.
So I think what I wanted to start with, if it's okay with you, is to kind of almost go back in time a little bit. Could we talk about your marriage and, how long you were married for? And I know obviously you're now divorced, but do you think it was a happy marriage predominantly?
Yeah. I mean, certainly at the start. And whenever I think about everything that's happened, one thing that I feel lucky about is that I wouldn't have done anything differently. I mean, we got married because we were in love and we were really happy and it was what we both wanted to do. And I definitely didn't go into it thinking, I have misgivings, or is this the right thing? Or I'm just doing this because I'm 30 and everyone else is doing it. In that respect, have any regrets. We were introduced basically through a mutual friend, and it's just very easy and natural. We were going out for about a year and then we moved in together, and about another year or so later we got married and we moved to Yorkshire in 2012. We did lots of work on a house together, and we had our oldest son about a year after that. We went on to have then our second son, who 2 years after that, and I would say the normal trials and tribulations of being new parents, and so definitely there were ups and downs, but I don't think probably anything that other people weren't experiencing, where you're both just trying to figure out what you're meant to be doing and keep children alive at the same time.
I think absolutely that. It's life, isn't it? It's life with a young family. It's life as a relatively young couple, isn't it? Like you said, you've been doing the house up. You're both working parents. You've got young children, and it's just life, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, what do you think changed then from that life that we kind of all know is a reality? When did things, were there warning signs that actually this wasn't the norm? This wasn't how things should really be panning out?
So I would say the first kind of period of real difficulty we had was almost an external thing, where basically my father became extremely ill when my younger son had just turned 1, and he ended up being in hospital in Scotland for 6 months. So he had a stroke, and then he had a heart attack, and then he had to have his leg amputated. So he went from being a man in his mid-60s that was still at work to a man that was like disabled, and his life had, flipped upside down. And in the time that he was in hospital, so my mother died when I was in my 20s, so there wasn't anybody with him in Glasgow, and my brother lives in Aberdeen, which is about as far away as Yorkshire. So my brother and I were taking turns at the weekend to go and be with him in the hospital and just do what he needed to do, and also look after my granny who was still alive at the time. So it was this absolutely mad period of time where basically every other weekend I went to Glasgow. Hal had the children on his own. In between times, my mind was torn between my father and the children. And then when my dad finally came out of hospital, he came to live with us in Yorkshire, and he was with us
Mm.
for about 8 months. And that was a real, I mean, literally trial by fire for everyone, that my dad was learning to walk with a prosthetic leg, kind of putting his life back together. I was helping him do that. I was also looking after the children. I worked. And Hal was also obviously supporting me and helping a lot actually with my dad. And by the end of that, when my dad finally moved into his own house and was able to live independently, a few months after that, we actually ended up going to see a therapist because we just couldn't. It was just, we were like, one person was in the North Pole and one
Yeah,
person in the South Pole. The communication was just not good. And it was really good. I found it really, really helpful. And I think just, I mean, I guess for two reasons, I would recommend it to anyone, that just having a neutral person there while you both get to say your thing without, and for some context, my ex-husband is a barrister and I'm a journalist. So it's like, here's two people that can really like to have a fiery debate and say a clever thing. That's not really great in the context of an emotional kind of, set to. So to have a person there
yeah,
who's like, okay, you say your bit and then you say your bit. And also you could
yeah.
listen to the other person, not just say your things. You could just take a minute to absorb what they said. And we both found it,
Absolutely, and
yeah.
really, really
Um,
useful. And sorry,
yeah.
just interrupt you. Sorry, yeah. On
No.
that note, I'd had a conversation
Mm.
a couple of episodes ago
Yes,
with a friend,
yes, I watched
and
that.
there were some great takeaways. And one of the things she did say actually was that couples therapy is something that actually we should be doing almost
Yes,
throughout our
yes,
relationship, because almost
mm,
when it happens at the end, it's
mm,
almost too
mm,
late. So you need to
yeah,
keep up
mm,
that communication, and like you've just rightly said, Amy,
yeah,
that neutral ground, isn't
mm,
it? Because I think it's very easy to, you
yeah,
know, as we all are, very opinionated, and we feel that we're right,
mm,
and
mm.
you want to validate your feelings. So when it came to you and Hal, were you both on the same page about trying to make things work, or
Yes,
did
yes.
one of you push more than the other?
No, I think we both were like, this is not good and something needs to change here. And I think I probably suggested the therapy because I had done therapy after my mother died, and I found it just amazingly helpful. And
Yeah.
after that, and I still am the biggest champion ever of everybody going to therapy, even for a short time. I think I don't really see why anybody wouldn't benefit from it. But so we did that, and we didn't do it for long, maybe like a month. And then after that, it
Okay.
felt like we'd both kind of taken things away from that, and things to work on. And then just kind of went back, I guess, into the river of the busyness of life, basically,
Mm,
and felt, and then so then it would be, I would say, a few years after that where I just had a real sense that he was not happy, and I knew he wasn't happy. But when I brought it up with him, he was like, "No, no, it's fine, it's fine. Well, it's just everyone's busy, aren't they? And everyone's under pressure." And we just I couldn't get anywhere, but I had a real feeling. I could feel that he had
mm,
pulled away from me, and he didn't want to make any plans. He didn't want to like go out for dinner, anything. Like the things that you normally, it's like, oh, you need to go on a date night, and that will fix all your problems. So he wouldn't even go on a date night, so we couldn't do that. Um, and then it
so
finally,
sorry, Amy,
and it just,
but how did that make you feel though? Because if you were the one, from what I'm understanding, suggesting doing
mm,
stuff together, and he was
mm,
immediately coming up and giving you a brick wall saying
mm.
no, how did that make you feel?
I felt like it was my fault. I felt, oh, I need to try harder and I need to be more something. And I couldn't
Yeah.
get and I couldn't work out what it was I needed to be more something. And I was sort of trying to like take things off his plate in the house, and I was thinking maybe he's just feels overwhelmed. But as when you're there, you're both busy all the time. It's not like one
Yeah.
person. In most modern relationships, most husbands are relatively helpful, so it's not like one of you's sitting with a newspaper, and what the other person's doing everything. You are both, so, and it sort of requires both of you to help and to be busy. So I couldn't kind of I couldn't, and I felt like I was trying really hard, and then it was probably almost making it worse because it was annoying him. I was trying so
Oh,
hard, and
yeah.
then and I was aware that we were arguing and that the children were getting a bit older, and they noticed it and they didn't like it. So and not so we were sort of trying not to do that, but then there's still unresolved, tension that's there. Um, and then we
Can I just bring, yeah, sorry, can I bring the children in at this
mm,
stage, because they obviously play such a major part of your lives. Like you
mm,
say, they were young, but they were
mm,
growing up, so becoming more aware. So it's every parent's prerogative, isn't it, to protect their children?
mm,
But you and Hal are living through something really quite uncomfortable. You're
mm,
living in the house, but
mm,
you're not getting on, you're not communicating.
mm.
So how were you protecting the children, and how were you communicating with this children at this stage when even yourself didn't know what was going on
Yeah.
between you and Hal?
They were so young that as long as we were both joining in with them and playing with them and doing things together, that was fine. And they would only ever notice if it was raised voices or whatever, somebody walked off. They would notice that, but not they made it clear that that made them unhappy. So we would try sort of really hard not to do that. But then it sort of adds to the pressure that the only time you can talk about this is once they've gone to bed at 7:30, by which point you're also tired and you want to have just
Completely.
vegetate and not have a deep and meaningful chat. All the things that you would probably do to try and improve a relationship if you didn't have children are not really available to you, in the same way when you have small kids.
Did you consider going back to therapy?
So we did, but basically this took us into COVID. So this was sort of 2019
Okay.
into 2020. So
Okay.
then we did the whole of that year of like lockdown, homeschool,
Yeah.
uh, being
Oh
stuck in the house
gosh.
together. And then and
Yeah.
then it was right at the end of 2020, so just before Christmas in 2020, Hal said to me, basically, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be married to you anymore. And we need to work out how we're going to do that. And my sort of immediate reaction was just total panic and kind of no, 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 no. We can't. No, that can't happen. We have to fix this. We can't just abandon this and let the children down and all, just total panic. And then
Yeah.
while I sort of said, can we just do Christmas? Because I mean, it was literally the next week or something, the next couple of weeks, and we had family. Or did we have no? Because nobody was coming because it was COVID. But anyway,
Yeah.
there were plans. But I was like, can we just do
Yeah.
this, and then we'll talk about it. But then between Christmas and New Year that year, his father became incredibly ill and ended up in hospital and with a terminal illness. So then it just sort of sat there. It was just hovering above our heads because then all our energy was into his dad and his mum, and that went on until the summer in 2021. And also within the midst of that, we were in lockdown again and homeschool again, and so it almost like this kind of revelation happened, and then it just got parked. And every so often, I would
Oh.
try to go, "Oh, what about that? Like, have you changed your mind, or do you still feel that way?" Or and he just kind of basically didn't want to answer. He wouldn't give a yes or no. And then, very sadly, in the middle of that year, his father died. So then that was another awful thing that we were dealing with. And so once again, it kind of got parked. And then it was
Parked.
only at the end of 2021 that I suddenly was just, we all got COVID. And so we were all stuck together, all me and him and the children. So none of us could go anywhere for whatever it was, 10 days. And in the midst of that, I just was like, we have to I have to know what the answer is. We have to decide what we're doing about this. Um,
Well, this is the thing, Amy. I can't imagine the kind of limbo that you were living in. To put on this exterior front in front of your children and
mm.
potentially other people that you saw,
Yes, no, I
I
hadn't
know it
told
was
a soul.
COVID,
I
so
hadn't told, yeah, no, there wasn't, yeah, exactly. Luckily, there weren't many social engagements, but I hadn't told a soul. And I had a Zoom kind of get together with my university friends every Sunday evening. And it was this real lifeline for all of us. But I never brought it up because I just was like, basically, three of them had babies during 2020, and it was like, that's a real kind of there's some big stuff going on here. Me having some problems in my marriage doesn't feel that big, and also
oh
I kept feeling as if maybe it'll just go away, and that was really what I wanted. I wanted it just to
no,
magically fix itself and that not
disappear.
and just go away. And but that's not what
I
happened.
it didn't, did it? And I just want to touch on when you said you didn't talk to anyone. For
Mm,
those people that are potentially living a maybe similar situation to you,
mm,
where they're trying to cling on to their marriage,
mm,
their idea of their forever partner, their forever
mm,
commitment is not working.
mm.
What would you recommend to people about reaching out to someone now? Do you regret not having someone to talk to?
Yes, and I think I think if we hadn't been in COVID, I would have talked to friends because when I finally did tell a couple of friends, and I felt so much better, and that was the first because obviously you're friends, you are so concerned with the children and the
Yeah,
husband and the house and the life and everything, but your friends actually care about you and you first and foremost. So they were the first people who were like, well, what do you want? What How do you feel? Like this has all been like, how does he feel and how can you fix it? But actually, do you want to fix it? Are there things he could do differently to make it, to improve things? So so if I had the chance to say that to somebody sooner, I would definitely recommend, if you feel that you can talk to a friend or a therapist or anyone to do that, because in your own head it just goes round and round and round and round and you think there's no
yeah.
way out of this, but there is.
And I think you've absolutely nailed it in terms of there are two people involved in this. There are his emotions and
Mm,
his wants, and
mm,
importantly, which you weren't recognizing, were your own.
mm.
And although by all accounts you were fighting to save the marriage, do you think deep down it was going to end?
um it's such a good question. I guess I still think now from time to time, I think, oh, if only, because now I've done more therapy and read all the books and listened to all the podcasts. I feel like I know everything about how you should keep your relationship going. And I think I probably think, oh, if I'd known some of those things about, like, why does someone react to something a certain way, or why do I react to things a certain way?
Mm,
Maybe if I'd known all those things, I could have I could have fixed it. But then that's still me thinking I can fix this. Whereas it's a two-person job. And especially if there's not, like, I think it's probably different if you, I don't know, because obviously I haven't experienced this, but if something really shocking happened, if when people find out about affairs, or people find out about, like, their partners gambled away all their money, or, things like that, it's just an explosively awful thing, then you
yeah.
probably, maybe you don't spend as much time thinking, what have I done this? What have I done that? Um,
But you can't look back and regret, can you?
but no,
That's the
exactly,
thing.
exactly. And now, definitely, so now this is 3 years almost, and since I finally was, what is happening here, and he basically still would
So
not
let
answer the question, and I just was, okay, fine. Well, that's an answer. Not being able to answer the question, do you love me? Do you want to be married to me? Is actually an answer. So so I will accept that answer. And even then, it was another 3-4 months, I would say, after that, where it kind of went back and forth. And I think with everything, when you think you're going to lose something, you want it even more. And we both were like, oh, we have to try and fix this. And then, oh, no, we can't. And we did go to therapy at that point, but only once. And that was more as a kind of, how can we resolve this well, basically, session. And it wasn't very
In,
successful.
in
It was it was a very good session, but by the end of it, I was okay. I've got an answer. I've got an answer. I can with this. Just needs to now. We just need to end
Okay.
it.
So, Amy, your life as you knew it after not getting the answer to the
Mm,
question
mm,
was going to take a completely different course. You know, you were entering a whole
mm,
different phase of your life now,
mm,
knowing that you weren't gonna be with Hal.
mm,
So, if you're able to, having not got that answer and realizing, right, the next step is that
mm,
we need to kind of work out how we are now going to separate
mm,
in
mm,
the best possible way, more for anyone than the children.
mm,
What
mm.
was it like emotionally and also logistically trying to go through that period?
Um, I would say so. I was definitely kind of, especially right at the beginning. I was just really terrified. I was really frightened, and I was really frightened for the children and the effect that it would have on them. And I had grown up with my parents were married, and so I had no experience of divorce or how this could work. And I just felt like, oh, I've completely failed you, and all the things that I had, I am not giving you them. And it took me ages, and also speaking to people who's a really good friend of mine whose parents were divorced when she was a child, but very managed it very very well, so that she still saw both of them. And
Mm-hmm.
she said to me, and another friend has since said the same thing, my parents being divorced was absolutely not the defining event of my childhood. It just was what my life was like. It just was like I went to this house one day and I went to this house that day. And I knew they
Yeah.
both loved me, and we still did things together, and they both came to my 21st and my graduation. And so I never felt I didn't have two parents, and I never felt like I'd been rejected by either of them. And I sort of, it just basically, I didn't carry this thing about on my back thinking this is a tragedy, my parents have got divorced. And so when I started to think, okay, there is a way to do this, then kind of all my energy went into, okay, that's what I want my children to feel like. I do not want my children to feel like this is the worst thing that ever
Yeah.
happened to them, and that this defines their whole childhood, which up to that point had been very happy and very, idyllic, living in this lovely countryside that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
And so I then read so many things and spoke. By then I was speaking to a therapist again, about how to tell the children and how to
Yeah.
explain it to them. And basically the kind of key thing is that you read all these things like children of divorced parents are much more unhappy and have more problems, and that as a blanket statement is really unhelpful, because
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
if you delve into it, it's children whose parents are separated and they don't see one of the parents, or
Yeah.
the parents have a horrendous relationship and fight and
Yeah.
say rude things about the other parent, and the children are constantly hearing your mother this or your father that, and have to, don't know, like, are pulled in two directions. If you can manage not to do that, and if you can see, have regular contact with both your parents, then there's no difference in the kind of
Yeah.
outcome. Your child is as happy as a child that's grown up with two parents living in the same house. So that then became kind of my aim.
Yeah, I'm just going to interrupt here. God, there is so much running through my head, and
Mm,
just listening to what you just said, it must have been a huge comfort to you
mm,
talking to your friends who have lived
mm,
through that
mm.
experience and knowing that there is a path that you can take. Because I
Yeah.
can only imagine if you're suddenly presented with this future that you have no idea how to navigate, like you
Mm,
said, your parents, were
mm,
married, so you hadn't been in that environment, but knowing that there was a path that you could take, and
mm,
it was a positive path as well.
mm,
And I just wanted to add to the fact that children can be very happy with divorced parents, because I think the the alternative could be even worse. Having parents that they live with who can completely bicker and squabble and clearly don't get on, I imagine that would have much more of an impact opposed to parents that are living in different places but love them equally and are able to be seen to be getting on. You might feel very differently behind closed doors, but to be able to be seen you're getting on must be a huge comfort for them as well.
No, definitely. One of the many helpful things that I read, and I'll tell you these books that I read actually, in case anyone also would
Please
like to
do.
get lots of advice from books. One of the things I read was a woman who was kind of trying to decide what to do in her marriage, and she was helping her daughter with something one evening, and she thought, would I ever want my daughter to feel like this? Would I want her to be in a relationship that made her feel like this? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And basically, if I stay here, then I am showing her that this is fine. It's fine for someone to speak to you that way. It's fine for someone to be cold and unkind. And so you are just acting out for them what they are going to do in the future. So if you ask yourself that question, then and the answer is no, then you probably need to do something about it. That book is an American writer called Glennon Doyle, who has a podcast called We Can Do Hard Things. The book is called Untamed, and it's sort of actually, it could be for any sort of life change. Obviously there are logistical, practical elements, absolutely, to separating, but also a lot of things you worry about are basically a cage of your own making in your head. And there's actually not a door on the cage. You can walk out, you can go through it, you can get to the other side. You just feel like you can't. So that was very good. And then the other ones I would definitely, books that I really got a lot out of were called Get Divorced, Be Happy by a comedian called Helen Thorne, who has a podcast called The Scummy Mummies, and it was all about her marriage ended kind of all of a sudden right at the start of COVID, and then she had this year where she sort of went down into a trough and basically was just in the house with the children in her pajamas, and then kind of slowly came back out the other side, and how she did that. And the other one that I found very good by Esther Perel. She's a psychotherapist who has a podcast called Where Should We Begin? And she's amazing. And anyone who's interested in relationships at all, I would absolutely recommend that podcast. And she has two books, one which is called Mating in Captivity and one which is called The State of Affairs. And they're both just kind of basically about long-term relationships and what you expect from a partner and what you expect from a relationship. And they're amazingly kind of wise. Great.
It's fabulous. I will put those links in the copy for this, absolutely, because I've Esther Perel. Funnily enough, I was only talking about her yesterday with a friend, and my friend was raving about her, and she's been sending me all these links to her podcast. So I will definitely check her out even more. So thank you for those. So going back into you're in the fog of the divorce. You're separating. The children, how did they take the reality of what was coming?
I mean, definitely telling them was the absolute worst part of the whole thing by a million percent. I dreaded it because the house we lived in was Hal's family home. So I had to buy a house, and it wasn't going to complete until the autumn. So I basically didn't want to tell them until much closer to the time that we were going to move, because I thought they can't grasp it until it's going to happen, and it's just unnecessarily upsetting. And so basically that summer, Hal was going to take them away. So before they went away, we explained what was happening. So obviously I wasn't going, and that would have been weird. So I'd sort of rehearsed it with the therapist about what to say, and I'd read loads of things about it, and I talked through with Hal, like how I thought we should do it, and all the advice I had was basically just to make completely clear to them that it's absolutely not their fault, and it's not because of anything they've done, because children will always try to understand it, and because they're just young, they don't have sophisticated kind of like reasons of why something might happen. So the first thing they're always like, oh, I must have done something wrong, and it must be my fault. And so you can't emphasize that enough, that it's absolutely not you. And we both
Yeah.
absolutely love you, and we are both still your parents, and you're going to see both of us all the time. And whenever you want to
Yeah.
see the other one, you can do that. And we are fortunate enough that I only live 5 minutes away from Hal. So it's easy to go back and forth, or, if they leave something at someone's house, we can easily take it over or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
but definitely telling them was without a doubt the worst bit, and I'm sure that is the same for most people. My older son just basically didn't say anything. He was completely
Okay.
mute for about an
Hmm.
hour, and my younger son just had loads of questions. He was just, but why? But why? Why don't you
Yeah.
want to be married anymore? Why don't you love each other anymore? Or,
Yeah.
and because I think I said something like, we still love each other, but as friends, not like a married people. And And really, I mean, what does that mean to people who are 8 and 6?
Yeah.
So he asked me that question loads of times. Then after that, for weeks, he was, but why? Why
So
not? Why not? And
how did you answer it then?
and I just was sort of like, just trying to explain that we do love each other, but we love each other like friends. We don't love each other like married people. So, but we still love you as your mum and dad. And kind of,
Yeah.
I probably basically didn't give him a satisfactory answer, because probably he's a bit of a detective and he just wants to get to the bottom of everything. But I was, I guess I didn't really have an answer, and I
Yeah.
didn't want to cast anyone else in a bad light, or, I didn't want to make it be anyone's fault or anything. So I just kept saying the same thing. And then, once I exchanged on this house, they came to see it, and I think they liked it, but then they were freaked out because they were like, "But where are our things going to go?" And I was, "Oh no, the people who live there now will
Yeah.
take their things away, and then we'll put our things
Yeah.
in." And they was, "Oh, right, okay."
Oh,
And
bless.
then
Yeah.
I think only, I would say pretty much only once we actually moved,
Moved.
I think at that point it became real for them. I think before that it was just, I don't think they really took it in until then.
It's not reality.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things I just want to pick up on, if that's okay,
Mm,
Amy. A couple of things you just said. First of all, you said, you don't think you gave them a satisfactory answer when they were asking the questions. And I think that's a
mm,
really valid point. I think, forgive me if I'm wrong in saying it, but I think it's probably okay to say, what, mummy and daddy don't have the answers.
yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
this is a new adventure. And I
Yeah.
don't know whether you can try and put a positive spin on it, but
Mm,
it's something that, we are going to work out together, and
yeah.
there's going to be lots of questions and I'm not going to be able to answer them, but,
Mm,
keep asking, and
yeah.
we'll try and work it out
Yeah.
together. So I suppose that's one way, isn't it? That
Mm,
people who are going through the situation can be like, I'm not here to
yeah.
fix things.
Yeah.
I'm here
Exactly.
just to make sure to say that we're doing this together, and mummy and
Yeah.
daddy aren't going anywhere,
Yeah.
but we'll just be in a different makeup in terms of
Yeah.
family units.
Exactly. And I said to them, it's really sad. I feel very sad about it, and I know you feel sad about it, and I let them kind of,
Yeah,
feel like that. And
yeah,
when we were moving in, I kept sort of saying, "Are you okay? Does it feel a bit strange?" And they were a bit strange. And
yeah.
but then I guess it was, it was quite lucky that school is the same, so the structure of the day is the same. And
Sure.
when you're on your first day in a new house, you still need to come downstairs, have your breakfast, get dressed for school, put your shoes on. All those things in your family life are still the same, so it's not
There's still
completely different.
routine. There's still routine, isn't there?
Mm,
And you said about how children, when there is divorce in the family, can take it on themselves and blame
mm,
themselves.
mm,
And I just want to refer back to when you were describing how you felt when you were going through
mm,
the separation with Hal, and how you blamed yourself.
mm.
Do you still blame yourself now?
I think I probably do still feel it as a failure. I feel I should have somehow not let that happen, but I do try not to, and I do have other voices in my head which are like, right, don't. But then I think you're just, like as I was saying, my parents were married, my grandparents were married, my probably all both of my grannies and my mum were probably bit rude and judgmental about people getting divorced, and it's quite hard not
Mm.
to absorb that and and sort of feel that, even when you know it's much more complicated than that. And also, I'm sure lots of people, in fact, not even I'm sure, I know lots of people stayed in very unhappy marriages in the past and probably wish they were
Mm.
divorced. Um, so I,
Yeah.
yeah, I think yeah, I do. But then when I hear that voice, I try to not like dwell on it for too long.
Let it, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't let it eat away, because I think as someone looking in and hearing your story would be like, my gosh, Amy, you tried. And like we said at the beginning, there are two people in a marriage,
Mm,
and it takes two people for it to work.
mm.
And if one of those people, for whatever reason, isn't on board, then you can't make them change. You
No.
can't make them come on board. And so it's very much, you need to definitely listen to that other voice in your head,
Yeah.
and get rid of all the stigma or the social conversation and twittering that's attached to
Mm,
divorce, and be like, you know what,
mm,
this is my reality now, and this
mm.
is and this is what I'm
Yeah.
going to make of this new part of my life.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So on that note, you've now entered a whole new chapter. You're
Yeah.
living in the most gorgeous house 5 minutes down the road from your ex-husband, but
Mm.
you're well, it seems like you're making it work. So how are you about this next stage of your
Yeah,
life?
so I think the big positive I would say is that I do feel happy about the way that the co-parenting works, and I think we both have tried
Brilliant.
very, very hard, and it gets easier as time goes on. At the beginning, I think you are being civil slightly through gritted teeth, but then you just
Mm.
sort of are civil, and like, but obviously I know that this is completely not the case for lots of people, and for people that have had awful things happen to them. And I'm obviously not saying that everyone this dynamic, but we can do it, and therefore we should. You've known someone for a really long time, and you know things about, like, oh, how's your sister, da, da, da. All that stuff is there, and you can be perfectly
Yeah.
pleasant and civil, and also, that person is the only other person that cares about your children as much as you do. So on the first day of
Yeah.
school, you're going to, this is them in their uniform, off to, no one else is that interested. So, so I feel
Yeah.
incredibly grateful to have, we can have the relationship that we have. And I feel if you were in a really tough situation and you weren't talking to each other, or you couldn't do that, because of whatever had happened, that must be excruciatingly difficult, because it definitely
Yeah.
makes both of our lives 800 times easier, because we can just
Yeah.
communicate
Yeah.
easily. And we also agree about how to bring them up. And there are very few things where we have felt differently about what would be the right thing to do here. And that is also helpful, because when I say no to something, if I say, like, I know
Yeah.
quite often they will just go and ask daddy, and then daddy will say no too. And then they'll be like, that didn't work. Um,
Absolutely. You've got to be on the same page, and there's got to be some form of communication, hasn't
mm,
there? And I'm just wondering, there would have been a lot of rural emotions being felt over the
mm,
last few years. And was it a conscious decision by you and Hal to make sure that you never spoke unkindly about each other in front of the
yeah.
children? Was there always something that you wanted to put across, a very positive conversation about daddy, or him about mummy?
Yeah, exactly. We both were united about that. We want this to be as okay as possible for them. And I
Yeah.
very quickly noticed that anything remotely negative that I said about Hal, silly things like, oh, daddy's not very good at finding things or something, which he's not. And he would admit that. They would be like, oh, or I said something about the fact that he's
Oh,
not much taller than me, which he's not, and that's just a fact. And they were like, he is very tall. And I was sort of, right, okay. So I finally was like, okay, right, you do not want to hear this. So just keep it to yourself. And
yeah.
it obviously just made them really uncomfortable in the idea that we would have negative feelings towards each other.
Completely. And I suppose that's a reflection of their headspace, isn't it? They want to protect both of you,
Mm,
And so I'm sure if Hal had turned around and said, "Oh, your mummy's tiny," no, she's
Yeah.
not. She's nearly
Yes.
as tall as you, or it would have come back in
Exactly.
a
Exactly.
it would have
Exactly.
come back in a different
Yeah.
way. So that
Yeah.
they're out there to protect you. And I'd really love to kind of just talk about the children now at this
Mm.
stage, because you've had your challenges. What about them? How are they navigating the whole co-parenting, and are they still trying to work through some of the challenges, or have things settled down
Um,
more in their lives as well, do you think?
think they feel they definitely really like the structure, the way we have it to stay the same. So, for example, we
Yeah.
do alternate weekends, and a few weeks
Yep.
ago, we basically ended up having to swap a weekend, and so Hal did two in a row, and I literally did not hear the end of that for weeks. They're like, "Oh, I mean, we haven't seen you at the weekend for 3 months," and I was sort of like, "Oh my word!" I was like, "It was one." And then there's things that they have dealt with really well. Like so Hal has a new partner who has children, and when they were first going to meet those children, I was really anxious about that and how they would feel about that.
Mm.
But actually, they really like these other children. They're very fond of them and they enjoy spending time with them. And
Yeah.
initially, I guess that was slightly hard for me to take because oh, okay, fine. But then the
Yeah.
adult part of you is okay, no, that's a good thing because you'd have to see them even if you didn't like them. So it's much better that you do like them. And that's just try and just take that as a positive. So
Oh, I bless
yeah,
you. Yeah.
I
that
think
that that can't be easy. That can't be easy kind of looking in, but you're absolutely right to flip it on its
oh,
head. So for them to get on with
mm,
those other children, then that is fabulous, and a reassurance for you as well. Talking about co-parenting still,
mm,
is there anything that hasn't worked and you're a bit like, oh, we need more work at that, or you wish that you hadn't done in the first place?
mm, when we first moved out, the plan was that they were going to spend one night a week with Hal, but that they were also going to go to his house for dinner one night. But after a few weeks of that, we were just this is a disaster because when I went to pick them up from Hal's house, which was our old house, they were sort of sad about leaving, and I absolutely
Yeah.
hated going there. I just felt unbelievably unhappy going there, and that obviously came across. And but I didn't want to say can we not do this because I felt that was his time with them and I didn't want to take it away. But eventually he said, I don't think this is working out. It's obviously unsettling for them. So I think it's better if we do the whole
Interesting.
night where they come and then and the weekend. And then and he, and so because he had volunteered it, I was okay, well I do then I completely agree with that. And that felt a bit odd, I guess, that I was kind of willing to put them in a situation that was making them unhappy because I didn't want to make him feel that he wasn't having something he was entitled to or whatever. But luckily, he didn't see it that way.
Yeah, that's fabulous.
Mm.
And so now, Amy, it's the future, isn't it?
Mm.
You mentioned that, Hal's got a partner, and that's working really well,
Mm.
with your boys. And so are you excited about the future? Are you taking it kind of week by week, or are you kind of looking a bit more kind of long term and big, what, this is what I want to do now? I'm putting yourself a bit
Yeah.
more kind of front and center.
Um. I think I definitely still have a slightly odd sense of. I literally don't know what the rest of my life holds, and that feels a bit
Okay.
weird because when you've been in a relationship for a long time, it's still sort of in your head like, well, we'll be retired and we'll do that together, and maybe we'll
Yeah.
travel, whatever, do all these things. And so now I'm just like, I could live anywhere, I could go anywhere, I could do anything once the children leave home. And sometimes that feels really exciting, and sometimes that feels like, ah, I want some
Terrifying.
certainty. I don't want to not know what I'm going to do. Definitely, there's much more financial uncertainty and things that do weigh on you than when you have a single income rather than a double income. But in general, I do, and I absolutely cherish the time I have by myself. So the weekends I have on my own, and the one night I have during the week, I try to do something, and I try to do something that I cannot do when I'm taking them to sporting fixtures and birthday parties and cooking
Yes.
endless meals. So that is a real win and a luxury that I know that other people don't have, and I don't know how that could be built into a normal couple relationship, but I feel everyone should be allowed to
True.
have a Sunday off every so often, and just
Yes,
just to do what they want.
exactly. Exactly. And I think it's also a case of not putting any pressure on yourself, isn't it, about the
Mm,
future, and that it will work out, and you've
yeah.
navigated this huge transition, and you're always so positive whenever I see you. And if you've been able to get through that, Amy, you can get through anything. I
Well,
honestly believe that, and you've been an absolute rock to your boys. And I know you've had a
thank
lot of,
you.
like you've alluded to, upset with your father, and
Mm,
it's been a really, really difficult few years for you, and for you
mm.
to be able to sit here now and to laugh and smile and be like, I don't know what the future holds, but it's okay.
Something.
Then I something then that's true testament to your character and what a special person you are. So
Thank
thank
you.
you so
It's a
much for sharing today. And
pleasure. It's a pleasure.
when we first talked, we were like, right, it's got to be about 30 minutes long, and I'm looking at the clock now and it's approaching the hour, but I didn't want you to stop. I didn't want you to
You can
stop. And you
edit me judiciously.
No, you've given so much insight, and you've been so honest, and I can only imagine some of those memories are very raw. So again, thank you for
It's a
sharing those with
pleasure.
us.
It's a pleasure.